All right, welcome everybody to another edition of Trail Signs. And today I'm joined by my probably longest buddy in the YouTube arena. I think we'll go all the way back to the first year when Snackbox first started commenting on my videos. And I thought, who's this crazy guy that keeps commenting on all my videos with funny little quips? And so I
Right.
checked him out and I was like, wow, this guy's pretty hysterical. So I should follow him. So welcome, Snackbox. How are you this evening?
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here.
Good to have you along. So, as I said, with trail signs, it's just kind of an opportunity for me to get together and talk mainly with the people that I don't see on a regular basis, but like talking to, and then chat a little bit about some things that are pertaining to the backpacking community. And today we'll talk a little bit about snacks, food on the trail, because in honor of your trail name. And also, I know that's your passion in life. So, my first question to start off here, as I usually do, as I recently started doing on the last one, I guess only been two of these I've done so far with this new questioning. But first thing I want to know is what made you decide to start a YouTube channel? And then how did you choose the name for that channel?
Yeah, so the YouTube channel started really as a response to the pandemic, being a real people person, right? So I knew that when the pandemic and closures started happening, it was going to be tough for an extrovert. So I started doing the channel then just as a way to kind of keep myself busy with all the shutdowns and everything. And the channel name really came from this idea that the whole idea of the channel is to help people feel more comfortable outside, right? Not that, I mean, I often talk about how you shouldn't try to be comfortable outside, meaning you shouldn't carry a bunch of extra luxury stuff just to try to recreate home in the woods. But at the same time, I think there's a lot to be said for helping people feel confident about going out to the woods and knowing that they are going to be fine and that it's going to be a really positive experience. So the channel name Outside Comfort Zone came from that idea of like, how do we help new people into this space feel like they belong and that they know what they're doing?
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's definitely an important thing because I think a lot of people get really intimidated by backpacking because you get in and you have to look at all the gear and everything, and if you try to approach it as a whole, it could be very like um, uh, scary, I think, or intimidating to a lot of new people. And I think also our general fear of not fitting in or not looking like we know what we're doing or something kind of causes us to um, kind of not get involved. And I think that it's unfortunate, especially in this arena, because generally speaking, I think most people in the backcountry are pretty helpful, other than the occasional gear jerk out there or something. But generally speaking, I think so. Yeah, anytime you have an opportunity to kind of help people, kind of nurture them along, I think that was a big reason for my channel as well. And again, I think why you and I clicked so well. So that's pretty awesome. So, so far, what has been your favorite part of producing your channel or doing your channel?
Yeah, it's really the people, kind of to your point, right? Like I've made friends all around the country. I've even had friends across the globe, right, on different continents and stuff that have commented and we become friends. So there's a guy actually in Afghanistan who does some really beautiful hikes out there. Sana something. I always just look for Sana Sana and then type in Afghanistan and then it pulls up his channel. And it's really pretty incredible. But it's really the people, right? So I meet all these cool people, kind of to your point, and I do think, generally speaking, folks who are into the outdoors are very welcoming. I think it's just one of those things where it's a rare space where everybody can disagree on everything in the real world, quote unquote. But when you're in the backcountry, none of that stuff seems to really matter quite as much. So you can make friends with people in a way that in America we really haven't been able to in quite some time.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of almost self-generating, safe, space. And I always tell people, like when I first started on the channel, I so much spent so much time preparing myself for all the negativity that you normally hear about in the internet region, and was just blown away by how much more support I got than that. So still get the occasional troll every once in a while, but most people are pretty supportive, which is always awesome.
Yeah, that's a
So
big thing too. Yeah, I had a similar experience where I thought, it's just going to be this sort of sea of negativity, and you're going to have to wade through it and kind of deal with it. That's kind of par for the course. And truth be told, largely, I mean, 99% of the comments I get or feedback I get has been really supportive and productive. And then, of course, there's every once in a while there's somebody who puts something up that's just um, doesn't fit that vibe, right? And so you just kind of move on and kind of trust that that says more about them than you. And what kind of miserable person is commenting negatively on a video about a national park, right? Like who
right.
that's not a space where I really want to spend a lot of time. So I really enjoy the other folks, right? The other 99%. And that's just it's just great, you know?
Awesome. Yeah, no, totally agree with that. And like I said, it's been awesome to meet the people that I've met through it, and very different walks of life in a lot of cases, but all having that common, center to kind of gel around, which is awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I think a lot of people on my channel know the embarrassing story behind how I got my trail name. And since your trail name lends itself to our topic for the evening, I would love to hear the story about how you got your trail name.
Yeah, yeah. So in 2018, I did the John Muir Trail and I went northbound and we started at this trailhead called Cottonwood Pass, which, for those folks familiar with the JMT, that adds 2 days, right? So you have 2 extra days until you can even you basically hike 2 days to get to the top of Whitney and then you start the trail there. And from there, you have 6 more days until your resupply. And that's if you're really cooking. So I had 8 days worth of food in my couldn't fit it in the bear can. We had to stay the first 2 nights near our bear boxes in the Sierra. And by the time we got the night before we got to the resupply, the other piece of backstory you need to know is that I don't take lunches, right? So I take a breakfast, I take a dinner, and I take 5 to 8 snacks for the day. And I space those out every hour and a half or so. And that way I'm always like on the verge of the next snack, right? And I can take lots of breaks, that kind of thing. And so the day before we got to resupply, my bear canister was just loaded to the brim of just snack wrappers, just like top to bottom snack wrappers. And I was sitting on it, and my buddy and I were sitting at this camp with a bunch of other people, and I said something real smart ass, and this one woman sitting at the campfire with us, or not campfire, the campsite with us, she just said, shut up and sit on your snack box. And so it just sort of stuck, and I thought it was great for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which is that it like covers like being a smart aleck and then also snacks and my love of that. But I also think like phonetically it's fun. Like it's got a really funny kind of ring to it, just a sound. But the sound itself is funny to me. So I liked it for that reason. And there's no other snack box out there, right? Although if you fly on United now, they sell snack boxes and it'll literally say snack box on it and it'll say like snack box and revive, snack box, relax, or and so that's a little bit of a bummer. And I feel like they probably owe me some tickets, but I don't think they're gonna hook me up with that.
Yeah, no, they definitely need to pony up for that because that's got to be some sort of copyright infringement or something.
It has
I
to
don't.
be, has to be. There's no way they don't owe me millions of dollars. That's what I'm gonna say. There's zero chance of that.
I'll back you on that. Yeah, no, that's the
Right.
other thing with like my trail name. First off, it's got a great story, and it was given to me by somebody that I really admire and appreciate. And so, even though he was more or less making fun of me at the time he gave it to me, but yeah, I don't see there being any more ghost mules out there. I could see it being the name of like some sort of, um, you know, post '90s industrial political band or something. But yeah, no, it's kind of fun to have a unique one. So,
Yep, for sure. For sure.
a- and I think most people in the community, if I say your first name, they don't necessarily know who you are. But as soon as I say Snackbox, like, oh yeah, yeah, Snackbox,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
know
that guy, right? Yeah.
Snackbox.
Yeah, that's the
So
thing about trail names that's a lot of fun. Is like you eventually don't even remember the person's real name because the trail name sort of supersedes it, you know.
yeah, absolutely. Kind of interestingly too, the story there about the JMT. I think you recently did the JMT with my previous guest,
Yep, try duty.
uh, Tri Duty. Yeah, so great guy. I bet that was a fun trip.
Yeah, it was wild, man. It was I've had we didn't make it, right? And I'm sure he talked to you about that. And
Hmm.
it was I've gotten bumped off trail for a lot of reasons. The most common reason I've had longer hikes end has been a timeline that's too tight, right? Like, and it just stresses me out because I have, exactly a certain number of days and I have to make a certain number of miles, and then it just gets to be too much, or I get a rainstorm kind of backs me up. And this one, we had lots of time, but we just didn't have, like, it was just the hurricane. We didn't know what it was going to look like, and we had already done that reroute. So if you're following the JMT news, there's a bridge that's like a major bridge across the San Joaquin River,
Hmm.
and it was wiped out. Like, it was sort of just mangled. And up until the day we got to that spot, you people were like climbing over this mangled bridge. I mean, it was terrifying to think, and they had like their kids going over it and stuff. It was really wild. So we took this reroute, um, and it took us up like this trail that might have been the hardest trail I've done over the length of like a long while. And it was like a combination of like steep rocks, slick gravel underneath your foot, very exposed. Kings Canyon is very, very rocky. Like, Kings Canyon has even more granite than, I'd say, Yosemite, right? Like, it's very, very like reflective. And um, so we climbed up this thing, and then we had to hitchhike all the way around to get to the Bishop Pass part. And we get to Bishop Pass, which is incredible. It's so incredible. In fact, I think it's either North Face or REI has a sleeping bag named after Bishop Pass, right? So we go up over Bishop Pass, and it leads you into Ducey Basin, which I have to say is the most beautiful place I've ever seen in California, right? Like, and there's some incredible spots, the Ray Lakes or Benson Lake, etc. But this is just I mean, it's just marvelous. But we got up to Bishop Pass proper, like at the pass, and there was a sign stapled to it, and they were like, from the Rangers, like, do not go back to the Rangers, like, don't go back to the JMT, turn around and go home. It's not safe. And there's this sort of conundrum, right? Like, you can go on. They weren't saying you couldn't, they were just saying don't. But then if you get into trouble, then you put other people in danger, right? Because they have to come rescue you in unsafe conditions. And it was really hard. It was a lot harder on Tri Duty than me, because I had already done it. And he was, I mean, the thing that was really frustrating, I think, for him is that he was super capable, right? He was, at no point was there any question he wasn't physically capable of doing it, or mentally capable, right? Like, he was solid the whole way through. Um, but yeah, that JMT is just an incredible trip, and um, I was super bummed we didn't finish it. It still haunts me. Like, I think about, that's the only bailed hike that I think about routinely. Like, probably
Sure.
once, twice a week. I'm like, man, I wish that would have ended differently. And all the other ones that I've had to bail on, I don't think about them ever. Like, I don't care. They're whatever, hikes end.
Yeah, but I think of all the reasons to get off of a trail, a hurricane is a pretty unavoidable one,
Right? Isn't that
for
crazy?
most. Yeah,
California,
it's so wild.
right? Wow.
So, all right, well, let's get on to the subject of the night, which again is food on the trail. And so, I found that food, and specifically snacks, are a very common topic amongst backpackers. Why do you think food is such a major topic for hikers to talk about?
Well, I mean, it's a vast majority of the experience, right? Like, and I don't mean that to be like trite about it, but one of the things that I love about backpacking is you really do reduce everything down to the bare essentials of life, right? Food, shelter, water, and then the only other factor you add to it, that you have to add to it, is locomotion, right? You have to move, but otherwise it's really just everything it's only the things you need. And food is a part of that. So you've got food, and if you think about like shelter and sleep, you spend very little of your time actually cognizant of the shelter and sleep. If your tent works well, you're sleeping through the night. So you're spending half an hour setting it up, half an hour breaking it down, and maybe 20 minutes sleeping, or like falling asleep. So you're really spending a lot more time in and around food, and thinking about food, and being hungry, and such. And it's also kind of a fun challenge, I think, for a lot of folks, because the tent makers make the tents, right? The sleeping bag makers make your sleeping bags. Backpack makers the same. It's very seldom that you're going to find somebody who's going to DIY that, but you will find very many people ready to DIY their meals, right? And it's one of the few things you can actually do a lot of before a hike and test out, and it's not expensive. You know, you dehydrate whatever you want, you can try different meals, you can mix it up. So I think it's a fun part of the hiking experience that can extend well before the hike and really keep you engaged in the preparation in a way that the tent can't. Because once you have your tent, you set it up once or twice, get used to it, you're done. Food is not that way. You can keep practicing setting up, work on resupplies, etc. It's a fun way to get excited about a hike as well.
Yeah, definitely, and I love that idea that it encompasses both pre-hike and also during the hike, like the planning and stuff. Like, I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you've done this, but I don't know if you've ever on a regular trip to the shopping or to shopping mart to the grocery store, and you're looking around and you see something and you're like, I wonder if I could trail food that. Have
Yep.
you ever just like arbitrarily thought about how, and like you say, you next thing you know, you end up buying something and you just like trying to figure out how you can make it work. And I do think it's a lot of fun. And also it generates the opportunity to create not only flexible or variety in your trips because you can change up your meal plans and everything. And but then also on the flip side of that is it can generate almost like a comfort thing. So like certain trips, like for me, I always have typically always have like some pepperoni. And also like I love cheese squares, like individually packed cheese squares. Just
Yep.
things like that that are like that little boost throughout the day, like something you can kind of look forward to. And
Yep.
also with food, like on the trail, being able to have that like reward almost, like the thing to look forward to at the end of a really tough day. And I think that's why there's such a big debate between the stove users and the cold soakers in the world.
Yep.
And, a lot of people have very heated opinions on those two things. For me, I definitely look forward to a hot meal at the end of the day, and I'm willing to take
Yep.
that extra. More power to those that don't or that do the cold soak. I don't think I could pull it off personally. I think just that mental, not only that, but like you said, if you're around people that are all doing it, I think it's good. But like it just takes that one guy in camp to have that really nice smelling hot meal made up, and you're just like salivating over there, like.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, yeah, I think it is definitely an all-encompassing part of the trip, both planning,
Yep.
preparation, shopping, even in the off season, like you said, kind of planning stuff out, and then also throughout the trip as well.
Yeah. And it's the most personal of the whole of all of these things, right? Like it's the one where your budget will impact it, your dietary restrictions, your preferences, how you grew up and were fed, and how you view food. I mean, there are all these factors where very few people have that hard opinion about like people. I sleep with a tent that doesn't have a floor, right? And the most I get from people is like, oh, I couldn't do that. I'm afraid of bugs, right? But if I tell them that I cold soaked for part of my like last hike, they're like, "Oh, there's no way coffee," rah, 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 and they all just like lose their minds. And so I get that too. But it is one of those things where your personal preference, it hits deeper for some reason or for many reasons, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's always funny, at the shop, we have the wall dehydrated meals, the prepackaged ones, and it seems like every week I get at least one person going, "So what's the best meal?" And I'm like, "Oh man, like I know what I like. I don't know that it's
Yeah.
going to be what you like." It is very
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah, it's also kind of cool that I mean, one of the things I think people don't realize is that after a long day of hiking, especially if you're like stacking days, right, on a multi-day hike, your food just tastes better, period, right? Like you can have I do a lot of like I'll take mac and cheese with some bacon bits, some real bacon bits and have that for dinner often. And man, people will I mean, that one is just it tastes it I wouldn't trade that for some of the, like, most expensive meals I've ever had in my life, but it's gotta be that situation where I've, like, worked all day, I'm hot, I'm tired, I'm dehydrated, there's a lot of salt that my body is just craving on this sort of, like, next level. Like, those are things that I think are fun for new hikers to it's fun for me to see new hikers experience. And I think it also is kind of part of that driving factor for where people who are cold soakers are they recognize that immediately, that this food is going to, like, sure, there's no way I would do this at home, but
Hmm.
on trail, everything's different. So I can go out there and this food's going to be good. And instead of thinking of like corollaries, like I need a hot soup, they're thinking like, oh, I would eat like coleslaw or pasta salad or something like that's all cold at home and it's fine. So I think it's just a different mindset. But yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for that hot dinner and what
Oh
it
yeah.
does between the years for sure.
Sure. And I recently actually did just switch a little bit into because I'm doing overnight oats now. And I started doing that at home and I really liked it. So I think it'll be okay on the trail, a little bit different way of doing it on the trail. But so I could definitely
Yep,
see some merit to those things as well for sure. So,
absolutely. Yep.
so do you have any, for speaking of new backpackers or even seasoned backpackers who are always wondering about things, do you have any strategies for selecting a good trail meal menu?
Yeah, so I like to, I mean, I have my strategy is very simple, right? Like you and I've talked a little bit here and there about it's just sort of a severe case of ADHD that I have, right? And so one of the ways that I keep things really simple is I have 3 or 4 meals that are just on my, they're just locked into my brain. So if I get to go on a trip, I don't even have to think about it because I know I can deal with the same meal every fourth night, and that's easy enough. And so I have this sort of stack, and they're all things you can find very easily and readily at every grocery store in America. So a side pouch of a side dish of instant mashed potatoes, right? Like that makes a great meal on trail. So just your Ore-Ida 99 cents pack of whatever. I also do the mac and cheese thing that I told you about. That one's really common. And then one of my favorites, and this is just one that an ex of mine taught me about, and it's still one of my favorite meals, is getting a good type of ramen, that sort of shin ramen. And then I'll cook the noodles, drain out most of the water, and then I'll hit it with a big scoop of crunchy peanut butter and put that in and stir it all up. And it's poor man's pad thai, and you hit the seasoning at the
Yeah,
end, and so these are all very affordable, very inexpensive. You can do the Nor sides are also great because the Nor sides have a lot of variety. And they're not terribly expensive. They're like $1.80 now or something like that. But they're all very easy and also very small to pack, very inexpensive. And so my best recommendation for a hiker is that sort of dehydrated wall. Those are great for like 1, 2, 3 night trips. But if you're doing anything more than that, or if you're planning to hike more frequently, you got to start finding grocery store items that are cheap because those meals are delicious. No shade on those companies at all, but they're also, for the price of one of those, I can have dinner for 4 nights ready. Right.
sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely am a bit spoiled in that I obviously get a discount, and so I
Right.
do tend to go with those meals, but I totally see what you're saying, and I prior to that, I definitely had a quiver of different, seemingly mostly ramen-based meals. I definitely have done the poor man's pad thai, and, throw a little bit of soy sauce in there maybe too with it or something, and, but then we also had one that I learned, um, prior to going back to college, and it was called ramen getty, which is again you cook up your ramen, you drain it out and everything, and then at the time I haven't been able to find them recently, but we had these like individually packeted things of like pizza sauce,
Sure.
and you would just throw that on there and like a handful of dehydrated onion or some pepperoni or something, and it was just a poor man's spaghetti.
Yep.
So, um, yeah, again, you just kind of get that creative thing there. But I do like that idea of having those standby meals and then kind of going from there to build off of.
Yeah, it really does help, and it's also great because you can sort of book out, like, buy a handful, buy 5 of them and keep them in your gear closet, and they'll be good for your next hike, and especially kinda keeping in mind that, like, if you can minimize those factors, then you can really focus in on some of the other things and making sure you've dialed in other gear, that you're not forgetting first aid stuff, that kind of thing.
Sure. And I think like you, I have a very similar style towards lunches. I don't do lunches either. Again, it's just a kind of a variety of snacks. I like one of my favorites is dehydrated mango. I definitely like the pepperoni and cheese, and I'll oftentimes throw tortilla in there, just kind of make
Yeah.
a quick man's tortilla stuff. So, and then a variety of other snacks. I'm not a big Gorp person. I know you definitely like the Gorp, but or that infamous video you did of
Yeah,
wet
the
ass
wet gorp.
raisins.
Yeah,
that was
warp.
that was brilliant, by the way. Um, but yeah, I like just peanut M&Ms. You know, you get the
Yeah.
peanut, you get the chocolate, like perfect. But that's, again, just a hack that works well for me.
Yeah, that's one that I definitely recommend for the snacking part is like every day a different candy, right? Like a Snickers bar, Baby Ruth, M&Ms. Those are all really nice to kind of mix in with the other stuff and getting a good balance between like stuff with like high fat, high sugar, but also some of the stuff that's like higher protein, that kind of thing can work out really nicely as well. But definitely candy of some sort for every day is great, and
Nice.
particularly chocolate based candy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So on those lines, what is your go-to most favorite snack? Like what's that one snack that's just always going to be in Snackbox and Snackbox?
Yeah, it's probably gonna be a Snickers bar. I mean, I think those are I don't really eat that I don't eat candy bars much in my regular life. So it's really nice, and I think the Snickers bar is like the perfect trail snack, right? It's sweet, it's salty, it's got, I think, no small amount of protein. Like it's I mean, it's just I think it's enough protein. I don't know for sure. You're gonna have on like um uh, the foodie, the backpacker foodie, Erin Mayhew on here at some point, and she's going to tell you that this is crazy. Don't listen to me about Snickers bars. But I do think that Snickers bars are really great. But I also like going and getting like fruit snacks are really nice because you can kind of throw a handful of them in and they're inexpensive. Or you know, anything you get that you would put in your kid's lunchbox, that's like those are perfect because they're going to be individually portioned, not terribly expensive. You can buy a pack of seven if you're doing a 7 day hike and just and you're good to go.
That's awesome. So the surprise question for you this evening, I'm probably gonna make this a tradition now too, but the surprise question, and you've kind of already more or less touched on it, but this is probably one of the most sought after, hard fought, debated positions in backpacking, gear experience wise, all across the spectrum. In your opinion, Snickers bar, candy bar, or protein bar?
I mean, it sells itself as a candy bar, right? Like I think if you asked the Snickers company, they would say candy bar. Um, yeah, I think so. But I also think I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think because the main purpose, right? You're not going to give away protein bars at Halloween, and so if you're giving away, yeah, it's got to be a candy bar because it's. I mean, you're not going to see somebody in a gym pumping iron and whatnot and then crushing a Snickers bar. That's just not going to happen. It's a candy bar.
That's fair. No, yeah, I definitely think I have fudged that definition a few times to kind of justify. But if I have my choice between a Cliff Bar and a Snickers, I'm probably going to go the Snickers route.
Yeah. And the Cliff Bars, those were great for, I think it's sort of a rite of passage that Cliff Bars are great for a while. And then when you start not liking Cliff Bars, then that's when you're like really hiker trash, right? Like that's when you've converted from just being like a hiker to full on hiker trash. And it'll happen for most people, but yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Well,
I
I,
say I
I
can't do Cliff Bars, but I'll probably do them again sometime in the future.
Yeah, it's fair. I look back at my first real big, backpacking experience in the '90s, and I think they still exist. I haven't seen them in a long time, but I distinctly remember the absolute revulsion of breaking into a meal and pulling out a power bar. I don't know if
Oh
you ever
yeah.
experienced it. Like it was
Yeah,
like
they had a weird like chemically flavor to it.
yeah, chemically aftertaste. It was like the consistency of if somebody took a taffy bar and rolled it in sand because it was
Yeah.
like gritty and sticky. Oh
Um,
God, they were god awful. So
yeah. I will say the Lara bars are incredible. Those are like there's a cookie dough one that legitimately tastes just
oh
like
yeah,
cookie dough. And those are I think they advertise or like sell them like advertise them typically for women, but That's just another secret. Like, just go get those, and they're small and like 200 calories per. Those are a good one. Lots of good flavors.
Yeah, I'm not too proud to eat a women's power bar, so definitely
Right,
I
right,
love the
right.
lower bars. So, all right, well, and then the last question, what was your worst ever trail food experience?
Oh man, my buddy and I hiked a number of different times with this buddy of mine in when I was in Boston. We even flew out to do the Dodson Loop in Big Bend National Park, and we did an overnight in the winter in the White Mountains. And I mean, we just had like all these great adventures together. And we had a cursed bag of it was like a mountain house at Huevos Rancheros, and every single time we went on a trip, we would forget it. And I don't know how it would like one time it would like got stuck between some couch cushions and we got on trail, couldn't find it. And the next time I mean, so we kept having to do without breakfast all these different times. And when we went out to the Dodson Loop, we were starving and woke up like got stuck in a snowstorm out of nowhere. They get 2 days of precipitation a year, and we get stuck in a snowstorm to the point we can't even see the trail at one point. And of course, we get to camp and had to wake up in the middle of the night to brush snow off our tent and warm up water for our Nalgene bottles, all this craziness. And we didn't have that stupid Huevos Ranchero. So we got home from that trip. I think it was the fourth time we had gone on a trip and forgotten it. We got home and we found it and threw it away immediately. So it never got eaten because we just didn't want to risk doing another trip where it got lost. But the other one, I've got a lot of these actually. The other one that's really good, total ADHD moment. My brother and I would do these winter trips. We did about 3 years where we do a canoe trip in the Everglades, which is, by the way, one of the most underrated national parks in the whole system. It is absolutely phenomenal.
Mm.
And we would do these trips, and I got real excited about there was the company that was selling just freeze dried sample pouches of different ingredients, right? You get them at REI. I think it was like $60 for this box of like a ton of different types of ingredients. And I got so excited about that that I packed that up thinking we would add it to different dinners, but I never packed other dinners. So we had like a week where we just had to keep making up weird soup mixes out of this stupid box because we didn't have any dinner. We had nothing. I mean, it was yeah, that was a pretty big oversight, but it was a pretty great trip. That was the same one where we got stuck on a sandbar like 100 feet from the visitor center. So for 4 hours, people could watch us and talk to us while we were stuck in a canoe. It was pretty great too.
That's awesome. That's got to be
Yeah, it
the
was.
most frustrating thing in the world.
Oh man, it was crazy because we started. It was like 4 feet of water, and from the tip of Florida, southern tip of Florida, where the Everglades sits, all the way to Key West, it's never really deeper than like 7 feet. So when the tide goes out, it goes out incredibly quickly. So
Mm.
we started in about 4 feet of water, and it was like a bathtub draining, just like. And then we were stuck, and
Wow.
we tried getting out and pushing it, and our feet kept sinking into the mud, and we were like, all right, we got to wait this out. So we played cards for 4 hours while we listened to people have conversations at the visitor center. It's not snack related, but that was the same
That's
trip where I forgot to bring any dinners, which was pretty incredible oversight.
that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't had any real major like forgetful meal moments like that, but I do think my worst ever experience with trail food, and I think what makes it even worse is we were warned about this. So when I went to Philmont as a teenager,
Mm,
they prepackage all your meals and everything, and they do all the selection process. And we had an adult leader in our group named Paul who had been on it previously, and he told us like days before it even started, like, "Hey, um, you're gonna get this thing in the kit called jalapeno squeeze cheese, and it's gonna sound really good and it's gonna taste really good, but don't eat it because it'll mess you up." And sure enough, being the genius, teenagers we were, we ate it and we loved it. And we're like, oh, I can't believe he would say not to take this. And we found out our misfortune. The first person to realize it was Scott. And I remember we were a couple miles out of camp, and like we're hiking down the trail, and he comes to a screeching halt and just stops, throws his hands up, and goes, "I need the trowel and the toilet paper now." And so we drop the packs and everything, and he literally does the waddle up with the trowel in one hand and the toilet paper in the other up the hill. And I think at that point we all kind of were like, "Oh man, maybe there was." And sure enough, about we finally made it to camp, and the rest of us got hit. and there was a latrine, and it was one of the few latrines at that camp that actually had walls. And so we're all standing there in a line, like doing the like clenched, ass cheek dance. And first guy goes in, and I'll never forget. He's in there, and all of a sudden we hear this like sound of absolute shock, and he goes, "Oh my god, my crap's got stripes!" And this stuff came out the exact same color it went in, and all of us had it. It was just, and we were all miserable. I think we have a picture of Scott like in his Crazy Creek chair, just like leaning off and like practically in a fetal position.
Oh,
It was bad.
that's a rough one. Yeah, that's like a practical joke. You give that to people and be like, "You got to try this. Take it on your next hike, and just let it play out how it will."
Yeah, I actually tried to find it, and you can't even get it in the States anymore. Because I was going to do a video on some of the old meals that I remember from Philmont, the stuff we had in it, and yeah, you can't even get it in the States anymore.
Yeah, it's probably
Probably for
probably
good
not
reason.
legal in most states. Yeah.
Would be my guess. Cool, man. Well, thanks again. I think we're kind of hitting that 30-minute mark, which is kind of where I like to keep them at. But any last comments, stories?
No, I think that covers it, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one last thing I did want to do is I wanted to kind of plug your upcoming project, which I think is really amazing. So, you're getting ready to do a documentary for the 50th anniversary of the Colorado Trail. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, so it's 50th anniversary of the Colorado Trail. So the plan is well, let me back up a minute. I set up a partnership with the Colorado Nonprofit Development Center, and so anyone who contributes to the cause, the donations are tax deductible. So if people have businesses that they want to give from, then that'd be great. Or if, I mean, personally, if there are people, of course, not everybody's in a spot where they can give, and that's totally okay too. But the goal here is that I'm going to make a film about the CT where I'll do my third through hike of the trail, but this time I'm only going to use gear that was available in 1974. And so it doesn't have to be 50 years old, but it has to be something that I could have bought 50 years ago. So very excited about it. Actually, I'm waiting on some final details, but sort of a teaser is that there's a sleeping bag company that's agreed to make me a sleeping bag and jacket using their 1974 patterns. And so they'll be contributing that to the project. So very excited about them coming on board. So really amped about it, but I'll make the full announcement about that one later on once we've sort of solidified some of the details of it. But very excited about it. It's something that's been sort of an idea that's been percolating for some time, and I'll be taking off in August. And so the website, if anybody wants to check it out, is 5050ontheCT.com. And so it's got a lot of the details. It's got a link if people want to give. So that's up there as well. And then also just follow along at Backcountry Champion on Instagram. I'll be posting some stuff, and of course, probably make its way onto the YouTube channel as well. But pretty amped about it. Looking forward to figuring out what kind of external frame backpack is going to be digging into my shoulders for 500 miles this summer, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that sounds like an awesome experience. I'm super stoked for you. I definitely would love to follow along, and you're a better man than I to do it. So, yeah. All right. Well, I know you've probably got some, stuff coming up here, so we'll go ahead and cut this off. But thanks again for coming on, and we'll put all the links down below for everybody who's interested in your channel or the documentary.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks. Have a good night, man.
You too. See you later.